The snow had already swallowed the road by the time the hearse got stuck. The church sat a quarter-mile up the hill, its windows the only warm light left in the storm. The funeral convoy had been crawling toward it for nearly 20 minutes. The hearse fishtailing through slush beneath fresh snow, tires spinning without grip. Then the rear wheels sank. The men climbed out cursing into the wind. Chains appeared, heavy steel links stretching from the hearse to the pickup truck behind it. Simple plan. Pull the hearse free. Finish the funeral. Get out of the storm. The pickup accelerated. The chains snapped tight. Metal screamed. The hearse lurched forward, jerked sideways on the uneven ground, and the rear doors burst open hard enough to echo through the hills. The coffin moved. Not fast. Almost slowly. Sliding halfway out before every man standing there froze. The kind of silence that comes just before something cannot be undone. Then the truck pulled again. The coffin hit the mud. Heavy. Final. Wrong in every way a thing can be wrong. One man screamed. Another dropped to his knees trying to stop the casket from sinking deeper into the slush. Expensive black suits disappeared beneath mud and snow as the men scrambled to drag the coffin back before anyone saw what had happened. They wrapped chains around the base of the casket and started pulling. That was when the panic reached its highest point. And that was the exact moment the storm changed. Not silent. The wind still howled through the trees. But something shifted in the air. One of the men stopped pulling. He was staring down the road. Into the dark. At first, it looked like nothing. Then came the lantern glow. Small. Distant. Barely visible through the snow. Then larger. Then the shape behind it. Then came the old rancher. 68 years old. Tall even with the years bent into his back. One lantern in his left hand. One shotgun in the other. And eyes colder than the storm around him. The men in the mud let the chains fall from their hands. Because Corwyn Hale was supposed to be dead. 3 days earlier, the county signed the papers. The death certificate was official. The funeral had already been paid for. But now he stood there in the snow staring at his own coffin. One of his stepsons tried to speak. Corwyn raised the lantern slightly. "You should have buried me properly." Nobody moved. The whole mountain seemed to hold its breath. Before we continue, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand what happened on that road, you have to go back much further than the funeral. You have to go back to the beginning of what Corwyn Hale built. And more importantly, what was taken from him. Corwyn Hale was not born rich. He inherited dust. His grandfather, a hard and unforgiving man named Fletcher Hale, built the original ranch in 1891 with stolen railroad timber, borrowed horses, and a stubborn refusal to ever leave Montana's soil. Fletcher never apologized for how he got it. He just held it. By the time the land passed to Corwyn's father, the ranch was 1,200 acres of cold, beautiful, unforgiving ground at the base of the Bitterroot Range. By the time it passed to Corwyn, it was over 4,000. Corwyn was not sentimental about the land the way people imagine ranchers to be. He did not sit on porches watching sunsets. He worked it. By 16, he could track a lost steer through 2 feet of overnight snow and be back before breakfast. By 25, he had doubled the acreage by purchasing 3 parcels of neighboring land from families who could no longer afford their winters. He paid fair prices every time. That mattered to him. By 40, people across 3 counties knew the name Corwyn Hale not because he demanded respect, but because he had never given anyone a reason to take it from him. He was the kind of man towns build themselves around without realizing they are doing it. But none of what Corwyn built alone could compare to what happened when Eleanor Viral came into his life. Eleanor was everything Corwyn was not. She came from old Southern money, relocated to Montana through a family oil investment her father had spent a decade building in the Williston Basin. Sharp-minded, elegant, controlled. The kind of woman who could smile at you warmly while making a decision that would permanently change your position. When she married Corwyn at 41, the town of Black Creek assumed it was a practical arrangement. 2 powerful people combining resources. But those who knew them understood it was something more complicated than that. Eleanor genuinely loved Corwyn, not despite the fact that he was nothing like her world. Because of it. And when she brought her investor network, her legal connections, her oil contacts, and the Viral name into the Hale Ranch, the land tripled in value within 5 years. Together, they became untouchable. at least from the outside. Eleanor had 3 sons from a previous marriage. The Viral brothers. Rhett, the oldest. Wade, the middle. Carson, the youngest. Corwyn never adopted them. They never asked him to. From the moment Eleanor moved into the Hale ranch, her sons arrived with polished shoes and unreadable faces, and they looked at Corwyn the way certain men look at a lock they intend to open eventually. Not with hatred, with patience. Rhett Viral was the most dangerous kind of man because he never appeared dangerous at all. Smooth voice, perfect suits, the kind of handshake that felt warmer than it was. He had learned from his mother how to read a room. He had learned from watching Corwyn that silence could hold more ground than a lawsuit. He combined both things in a way that made him genuinely difficult to outmaneuver. Under normal circumstances. For nearly 2 decades, Rhett kept his distance. He attended holiday dinners at the ranch with a glass of bourbon and a compliment always ready. He sent birthday cards to Corwyn without being asked. He never argued over Eleanor's financial decisions in front of witnesses. But inside the family, resentment was building the way pressure builds beneath frozen ground. The Viral brothers had never accepted that Eleanor's wealth was now legally tied to Corwyn Hale's name. They saw Corwyn as a caretaker, a placeholder, a man standing between them and what they considered their inheritance. They were waiting for Eleanor to leave it to them. For a long time, they believed she would. Then Eleanor died. It was a Tuesday morning in late October when the stroke took her. Corwyn was in the east field when one of the ranch hands came running. He reached her bedroom before the ambulance. He held her hand until it went still. And something in Corwyn Hale changed permanently in that room. Not visibly, not dramatically. He did not collapse. He did not stop working. He just became quieter. The kind of quiet that does not mean peace. The halls of the ranch house felt colder that winter. The horses grew restless. The workers spoke in lower voices. Corwyn stopped attending town events, stopped returning calls, stopped fighting small arguments the way he once had. And that stillness was the open door the Viral brothers had been waiting their entire adult lives to walk through. It began gently. Rhett started visiting more frequently, the concerned stepson checking in on a grieving man. He brought Wade and Carson with him on weekends, and they sat around the kitchen table asking careful questions about the ranch finances, the oil survey reports Eleanor had commissioned, the lease agreements still pending. Corwyn answered them plainly. He had nothing to hide. That was his first mistake. Not because honesty was wrong, because he misread what was sitting across the table from him. Within weeks, Rhett had introduced a new ranch attorney, a man named Pollard, from a Billings firm that nobody in Black Creek had ever heard of. Pollard was pleasant and efficient and appeared genuinely helpful. He reorganized several administrative accounts, shifted some signature authorities, just temporary management structures while the estate settled, he said. Corwyn did not love it, but Eleanor had trusted her sons, and he believed in honoring that. Then the story started. Quietly at first, the way smoke moves before anyone sees fire. People around Black Creek began hearing things. That Corwyn had forgotten a conversation with his own foreman and accused the man of lying. That he had been seen at 2 in the morning walking the fence line without a coat. That a ranch hand had quit suddenly after Corwyn threatened him over a feed dispute. None of it sounded entirely impossible. Grief does strange things to a man. But the stories kept arriving with suspicious regularity. 1 per week. Always specific. Always from someone who had not witnessed it directly, but had heard it from someone who had. Then came the medical evaluations. Rhett arranged for 2 physicians to assess Corwyn's cognitive function. Both were connected to the Billings firm. Neither had ever treated Corwyn before. Their reports arrived within days of each other and used nearly identical language. Early-stage cognitive decline. Confusion under stress. Dementia presenting as paranoia. The reports were filed with the county. The ranch attorneys submitted an emergency guardianship petition. Corwyn hired his own lawyer from Missoula and challenged the evaluations immediately. But by then the bank accounts had already shifted. The signature authorities had already been rerouted. The temporary management structures Pollard had quietly installed weeks earlier were already in place. Corwyn was fighting with tools that had already been removed from his hands. It came to a head on a Wednesday afternoon at the Black Creek Diner. Corwyn was finishing lunch when Rhett walked in. Wade and Carson behind him. Pollard to his left. 2 county officials to his right. They sat down without being invited. Rhett placed a guardianship document on the table. Thick. Official. Already signed by a judge. Half the diner was watching. Corwyn looked at the papers for a long moment. Then he looked at Rhett and signed nothing. So Rhett leaned forward, close enough that only Corwyn could hear. You built this ranch with her, not without her. The sentence landed like a shovel of dirt on a coffin lid. Corwyn sat completely still, not because the words broke him, because something locked into place inside him in that moment. A total and final understanding of exactly what kind of man was sitting across from him. 3 weeks later, county officials arrived at the ranch with removal papers. The ranch workers stood at a distance and watched Corwyn Hale walk out of his own home, carrying a single bag. Nobody stepped forward. Not because they despised him, because Rhett Viral had spent 3 months making quiet phone calls to every employer in the valley, and fear moves faster than loyalty in a small town. Corwyn was transported to a private care facility called Clearwater Ridge, 2 counties east, buried in the hills outside a town called Denton. And for the first time in nearly 50 years, the Hale Ranch did not belong to Corwyn Hale. That night, the Viral brothers celebrated in the main house. Champagne, steaks, expensive laughter carrying through rooms where Eleanor once read in the evenings, and where Corwyn had buried her wedding ring beneath a floorboard during a lightning storm the summer she was afraid of losing it. They laughed in those rooms like men who believed the story was finished. Greed has a strange weakness. It becomes careless once it believes the fight is over. 3 months after Corwyn's removal, oil surveyors confirmed what Eleanor's preliminary reports had suspected for years. Beneath the Hale Ranch sat one of the largest untapped crude deposits on private Montana land. Enough oil to generate tens of millions in revenue over a 20-year extraction lease. Rhett moved within 48 hours of receiving the report. Emergency contracts, expedited state permits, political donations processed quietly through a PAC connected to a county commissioner. By the time the ink was dry, the Viral brothers had signed a preliminary extraction agreement with a Houston energy company for an initial payment of $11 million, with royalty structures that would compound for decades. They did not notify Corwyn. They did not consult the estate attorney who had managed Eleanor's original will. They simply moved. And then, to ensure that no legal challenge could complicate the contracts already signed, Corwyn Hale died. At least according to the paperwork. Cardiac arrest. Night of December 15th. Clearwater Ridge Care Facility. Closed casket. Immediate arrangements. No public viewing. No delays. The death certificate was filed with the county the following morning. People in Black Creek found the whole thing slightly strange. Nobody had visited Corwyn at the facility. Nobody had received a call from a doctor. Nobody had actually seen the man in 3 months. But Rhett Viral was already speaking warmly at the diner about his stepfather's peaceful passing. And money has a way of making a town decide not to ask the question forming in the back of its throat. The funeral was scheduled for December 18th. The storm arrived that same evening. What the Viral brothers did not know was that Corwyn Hale had not spent 3 months at Clearwater Ridge decaying in a vinyl chair. He had spent 3 months building. Corwyn had known something was wrong before Rhett walked into that diner. He recognized the architecture of what was happening. His grandfather had run a similar play on 3 neighboring families in 1903 and had described it at the dinner table as a lesson in how power actually moves. You do not take a man's land in one move. You take his credibility first, then his access, then his witnesses, then the land walks itself out the door. So Corwyn had made a decision long before the county officials arrived with removal papers. He would go, willingly, quietly, because a man who appears broken stops being watched carefully. Before leaving the ranch, he made one phone call to a woman named Ruth Ellison, Eleanor's private attorney before the Billings firm replaced her. Semi-retired now, with an office above a hardware store in Missoula. 72 years old and sharp as a filed blade. Ruth was the only person alive who knew the full contents of Eleanor's original will. The one that had never been filed with the county. The one that had been quietly replaced in the estate records with a version leaving controlling interest to the Viral brothers jointly. Eleanor had written 2 wills. The second one, the real one, left controlling ownership of the ranch entirely to Corwyn until his natural death, with an ironclad provision. No oil extraction, no major land transaction. Without unanimous written consent, from all surviving family members. That single clause made the Houston contract worthless, and Red had known it from the beginning, which is why the original will had never seen the inside of a courthouse. Ruth had kept a certified copy in a fireproof safe behind the drywall of her Missoula office for 11 years. Eleanor had placed it there herself. She had smiled when she did it and told Ruth she hoped nobody ever needed it. While Corwyn was at Clearwater Ridge, he was not confused, and he was not medicated, and he was not staring at daytime television in a vinyl chair. He was meeting with Ruth 3 times a week in a room the facility director had been quietly compensated to keep off the visitor log. He was reviewing documents. He was collecting recorded testimony from 4 former ranch employees who had witnessed the account transfers and been pressured into silence. He was in contact with a federal land fraud investigator in Helena who had been building a separate case against the Viral brothers' oil dealings for months. And he had been in contact with a journalist from the Billings Gazette who had received an anonymous tip about forged medical evaluations tied to a guardianship fraud case in Ravalli County. The coffin had been Corwyn's idea. Every document, organized, certified, sealed inside a steel-reinforced case fitted inside a standard funeral casket, arranged so that when the lid was forced open in front of witnesses, nothing could be taken back. The fake death certificate had come through a county clerk in Denton who had once been helped by Eleanor's charitable foundation and had never forgotten it. The timing was Corwyn's. He chose December 18th because the storm forecast was severe, because a hearse stuck in the snow on a mountain road outside a church creates a scene that cannot be controlled. And Corwyn Hale had spent 68 years learning that the best place to end a fight is somewhere your opponent cannot retreat from cleanly. The snow had already swallowed the road by the time the hearse got stuck. The church sat a quarter-mile up the hill, its windows the only warm light left in the storm. The funeral convoy had been crawling toward it for nearly 20 minutes. The hearse fishtailing through slush beneath fresh snow, tires spinning without grip. Then the rear wheels sank. The men climbed out cursing into the wind. Chains appeared, heavy steel links stretching from the hearse to the pickup truck behind it. Simple plan. Pull the hearse free. Finish the funeral. Get out of the storm. The pickup accelerated. The chains snapped tight. Metal screamed. The hearse lurched forward, jerked sideways on the uneven ground, and the rear doors burst open hard enough to echo through the hills. The coffin moved. Not fast. Almost slowly, sliding halfway out before every man standing there froze. The kind of silence that comes just before something cannot be undone. Then the truck pulled again. The coffin hit the mud. Heavy. Final. Wrong in every way a thing can be wrong. One man screamed. Another dropped to his knees trying to stop the casket from sinking deeper into the slush. Expensive black suits disappeared beneath mud and snow as the men scrambled to drag the coffin back before anyone saw what had happened. They wrapped chains around the base of the casket and started pulling. That was when the panic reached its highest point. And that was the exact moment the storm changed. Not silent. The wind still howled through the trees. But something shifted in the air. One of the men stopped pulling. He was staring down the road, into the dark. At first, it looked like nothing. Then came the lantern glow. Small, distant, barely visible through the snow. Then larger. Then the shape behind it. Then came the old rancher. 68 years old. Tall even with the years bent into his back. One lantern in his left hand. One shotgun in the other. And eyes colder than the storm around him. The men in the mud let the chains fall from their hands. Because Corwyn Hale was supposed to be dead. 3 days earlier, the county signed the papers. The death certificate was official. The funeral had already been paid for. But now he stood there in the snow staring at his own coffin. One of his stepsons tried to speak. Corwyn raised the lantern slightly. You should have buried me properly. Nobody moved. The whole mountain seemed to hold its breath. Rhett Viral stood in the mud in his ruined overcoat and said the only thing his mind could produce in that moment. He called Corwyn confused, delusional, dangerous. But the town had already seen the impossible with their own eyes. Corwyn walked to the coffin. He placed one weathered hand on the wood. And he smiled. Not warmly. Not with triumph. The way a man smiles when he arrives at the final page of a book he has already read. Then he opened the coffin. Inside was no body. Only the steel-reinforced case. And when its lid came up, the documents inside caught the wind immediately. Land deeds. Bank records. Medical evaluation reports bearing the names of two physicians who held no valid Montana medical license. Signed internal correspondence between Rhett Viral and the Houston Energy Company, dated 3 weeks before Corwyn was ever removed from the ranch. Guardianship filings traced back to Pollard's firm through forged signatures. Bank transfer records showing $11 million moved through 3 shell companies in 48 hours. The storm outside howled harder as paper scattered across the snow and mud. Every secret the Viral brothers had buried came spilling out across that church road in front of anyone with eyes to see it. And at the bottom of the case, sealed in a cream envelope with Ruth Ellison's notarization stamp pressed into red wax. Eleanor's original will. The real one. The ranch was never supposed to belong to the Viral brothers. Not under any arrangement that bypassed Corwyn Hale's consent. Townspeople standing near the church read the pages as they blew past. Ranch workers who had been afraid to speak for 3 months reached out and caught the documents from the air. The county commissioner who had fast-tracked the oil permits walked silently to his car without making eye contact with anyone. Rhett Viral stood in the snow and said nothing. Because there was nothing left to say. The lawsuits began within days. Then the federal investigation out of Helena. Then the journalists. The land fraud case merged with the Viral oil filing case and became one of the largest rural property fraud prosecutions in Montana history. Old ranch workers gave depositions. Associates of Pollard's firm began cooperating with investigators to protect themselves. Bank accounts across 3 states were frozen. The Houston Energy Company voided the extraction contract within 72 hours, citing undisclosed material fraud in the original land title representations. $11 million, reversed. Pollard surrendered his law license before charges were formally filed. Rhett tried running. He made it as far as Spokane before federal agents met him in a hotel lobby. Wade turned on his own brother within a week. Full testimony in exchange for reduced charges. Carson, the youngest, disappeared into gambling debts and was gone from Montana entirely before his name appeared on a single court document. And Black Creek watched the Viral name dissolve the way all names built on borrowed ground eventually dissolve. Publicly, slowly, without the dignity of a quiet exit. The humiliation was not a single moment. It was a season. Every week brought a new headline, a new court filing, a new name the Valley had trusted appearing in a federal complaint. The ranch was restored to Corwyn Hale by county order 4 months after the funeral. He drove himself back. No ceremony. He parked his truck in the same spot he had parked it for 40 years, walked through the front door, and stood in the kitchen for a long moment without moving. Then he put on a pot of coffee and went back to work. People expected the wounded man to become the cruel one. That is usually how these stories end. But Corwyn understood something that takes most men a lifetime to learn. Real revenge does not announce itself. It does not need an audience. It survives. It continues. It outlasts the people who believe they had ended it. Within 6 months of reclaiming the ranch, Corwyn formally refused every remaining oil offer on the property. He had the extraction survey reports locked away. He donated 40 acres along the southern edge of the ranch to a land trust protecting native grazing territory. He established a small fund through Ruth Ellison's office that provided legal assistance to ranch families in the valley facing fraudulent guardianship actions. He named it the Eleanor Hale Land Protection Fund. He did not make a speech about it. He filed the paperwork and went back to the East Field. One reporter caught him by the fence line one morning and asked why he had not cashed in on the oil. After everything that had been done to take it. After everything it had cost him to get it back. Corwyn looked out across the snow-covered hills for a long moment. Land remembers the hands that bleed on it. Then he turned and walked toward the barn. And for the first time in years, Black Creek felt quiet again. Not peaceful exactly, just balanced. The way a scale feels when the weight on both sides finally settles. Like a debt that had been a long time coming had finally, completely, been paid. If you stayed until the end, thank you. More stories from Breach and Balance are already on your screen. Click one now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, don't miss what's coming next. See you there.